Hello, I'm going to talk about motivation in the classroom. It's a key aspect of what we do. It's a key aspect of successful learning and successful teaching. Now, of course, we can assume that when adult learners walk into a classroom for the first time, they're going to bring with them a fair baggage of their own motivation. Obviously, they made a decision to learn English, and one can assume that their kind of decision also is to do it successfully. So we can't expect, though, that baggage of motivation to survive intact regardless. So perhaps that baggage of motivation that I mentioned before, it's more like a snowball rather than a solid rock. A solid rock will survive all sorts of conditions and weathers. A snowball, of course, won't. Now, the school itself, of course, has a role in this. The courses that the school offers, of course, that's the first thing of all. If a student finds that the course itself, the methodology, the material, simply doesn't match the student's own expectations or preferences, of course, that snowball's going to melt pretty rapidly. Now, on the assumption that the student has chosen a course that they've already seen matches those expectations, so the course is appropriate to them, that's fine. The school does, of course, have a role in terms of grading, in terms of course management. So, of course, if the student's at the wrong level, that's not going to help. If the student's in a class that's going too slowly, too fast, if the rest of the group perhaps are not the same sort of aptitude, they're slower, they're faster themselves, that's not going to help as well. So the school has a role in providing, creating the right kind of conditions for that motivation to survive. Now, assuming that's working, of course the teacher in the classroom, lesson to lesson, minute to minute, has to keep an eye out to ensure that the motivation remains intact, as I was mentioning before. So the motivation then, this baggage of motivation, maintaining that it's not simply a happy accident, it's a combination of factors. In the classroom itself, motivation, I think, is largely a question of the right balance between reward and challenge. Reward simply means that the student is aware of the fact that all the hard work they put in previous lessons is now showing fruit. Often perhaps they'll be aware of that themselves. They'll realise that they're getting things right, whereas before they couldn't. They'll realise that they're using words that weeks before they simply didn't know. Sometimes students will be aware of that, very often they won't, and it's up to the teacher perhaps to point that out. To point out that they're using, for example, didn't or did or doesn't correctly. Those are little things, but they can be very important. Judicious and well-dosed praise is important, along with the awareness of exactly what is falling into place. So that's the reward side of things. Challenge is important too. I've talked before about the course ensuring, the school ensuring that the courses are proceeding at the right kind of pace. That will present challenge. But the teacher, again, can have an influence over that as well, by not dumbing things down, by looking at each student's maximum potential and how, if you like, the performance in the class, how far or close it is to what the teacher recognises as being the student's potential. So perhaps that could be talked in a previous screencast about speed. Okay, obviously, if the teacher is speaking very slowly, there's no challenge there at all. That's sending negative messages. If the level of correction, the level of expectation of accuracy that the teacher is setting is too low, again, that will remove the element of challenge. So, of course, we're not looking to make things as difficult as possible. We're not going to be the person who's never pleased, who will always find fault. But by sending positive messages to the student, by saying, I know that you can do this, you know, I'm going to make this difficult enough, but I know it's within your potential, and making sure that gap, if you like, that margin between actual performance and potential is never too broad. We're going to set the right degree of challenge. So that combination, as I said, of challenge and reward in the lesson, the minute-to-minute episodes that make a lesson up, as well as the overall tone of a lesson. That is very important, maintaining motivation, the right kind of encouragement, the right kind of praise, the right kind of information about the course and how learning is proceeding and how the learner is learning. That, along with good course management and initially placement testing and course formation, these are all aspects that will ultimately make sure that that snowball, it might melt a little bit, but it does last the course.